Welcome to today's edition of the Reporter Roundtable. We're got a couple of us taking an early start to the Memorial Day weekend, so we're going to bring you our Reporter Roundtable a day earlier than normal this week. I'm Don Wick, along with Kara Hart, Megan Overby, and Randy Coonan, and we're going to look at some of the stories we've been following here this past week. One of the big stories, obviously, was that wind we had on Tuesday. It was just terrific. 50, 60-mile-an-hour winds were pretty commonplace. Randy, you were out in it firsthand. Crop Watch was on Tuesday, and you had some pretty amazing video of what you were driving through or riding through, I guess, at that point.
Yeah, and you could see it coming too as the morning wore on. We started off, we were down in that Sisseton, South Dakota area, and the Sisseton Hills had kind of a warning as well. But earlier in the day, wind hadn't kicked up yet, and plenty of cover crop down there or standing corn stalks that they just plant into with no-till. And no dirt blowing around down there. But by the time we got to the noon hour, and wind was kicking up strong enough where we started seeing dirt blowing through those corn stalks, through the cover crops, and it just kept getting worse as we moved north into the valley, where the land flattened out and the wind really kicked up there. Yeah, it was like driving in a snowstorm. All of a sudden, cars would come out of nowhere at you, and there they were, just. And then it would clear off for a little bit, and then another gust would kick up, and it was really, really tough to see.
It's one of those days when social media really showcases what's happening out there. We saw a lot of pictures of what we were seeing on Tuesday with that wind. And Randy, I got to believe that had to be tough on some of the new crop that's coming up here.
Yeah, definitely. And that was my first concern as a former sugar beet grower. We always worried about wind propelling those little beets out of the ground or breaking them off. And when I talked to the co-op, Mindac, and also American Crystal, both agronomists were saying, yeah, we lost some. We don't know how much yet. We thinned the stands for sure, but we don't know how much replant needs to be done yet. And that may take a couple of days before we find that out for sure.
Yeah. Guys will be out this weekend. I'm guessing scouting fields early next week anyway. We got some rain going on this morning in some parts of our region. It really extends all the way from Kansas, Missouri, up through Iowa and Nebraska and into Minnesota and hitting into southern North Dakota as well, South Dakota. Megan, that follows some rains we saw earlier this week as well.
Yes, certainly. It's a pretty gloomy day here at Binford. No rain, and we didn't get any rain, earlier in the week when some people caught a spotty shower. But regardless, yes, I actually talked about this rain scenario when I was at Leeds, North Dakota yesterday for our Pioneer Agronomy Update. I visited with a farmer up there and seed salesman Doug Dalmage, as well as Larry Lunder with Pioneer. And Doug was really surprised. So in that Leeds, North Dakota area, we took a trip back 2 years and talked about how, Randy, you were out visiting him for a similar update, and he was singing the same song, "It's dry, it's dry." And while they were able to catch about a half an inch to an inch of rain, depending on exactly where you were, what direction you were from town, they're still pretty dry. He was surprised, though, with that rain that they did get, that the rain did sink down into the soil. But, when we're talking, wind for one, but then, 80-degree temperatures next week in some parts of the region, that's scaring guys a little bit, because while that moisture is there now, it's not going to take a whole lot of heat or wind to suck all that moisture out of the soil.
Well, that kind of relates to the Drought Monitor that came out this morning. Kara, you've had a chance to look at that. Has some of the moisture had any impact on the Drought Monitor?
So Don, I think some of that spotty rainfall we've seen in the last week is actually showing up on this week's Drought Monitor. Taking a closer look, and you kind of have to really, especially in North Dakota, watch your colors there. The dry conditions have improved slightly here in North Dakota, especially in the southwest and southeastern parts of the state. Portions of Dunn, Stark, Hettinger, Grant, Stutzman, Griggs, and Foster counties, among others, did show an improvement from the red, the extreme drought, I should say kind of a lighter red, not a dark red, to severe drought. And I think that's orange on that Drought Monitor. And at the same time, The drought monitor also showed an expansion of the exceptional drought category in North Dakota too. So those areas that were really dry before the rain, some of them actually did get rain in the last week, but it wasn't enough. And I think realistically, we knew going into these rains that the drought wouldn't go away, but entering into June and maybe with some rain in the forecast could be a good thing, but it worries me a little bit if we're setting already at exceptional after a few rains still and it's expanding. What does the rest of the growing season look like? In South Dakota, the rains did improve the dry conditions there. And then in Minnesota, the abnormally dry conditions continue to spread in the western part of the state. But I did notice in that northwestern part of Minnesota that Kitson County area is still having some severe drought, but didn't look like Marshall County had the extreme drought. So maybe the rains helped there. So that's a quick rundown of that drought monitor.
Dry conditions, it's all perspective, I guess, on where you're at and how dry it really is, what we're dealing with. Megan, you talked about being up in Leeds, North Dakota yesterday. I know you've been talking with growers across their region as well. What are they saying?
Yes, as far as dry, so building off of what Kara had to say about that drought monitor, I talked with a farmer and seed salesman in the Murdoch, Minnesota area. And once again, he goes, you don't have to go too many miles east, north, south, west of him. And it's a whole different story. So they started their planting season with really good moisture. If you remember back sometime mid to end of April, there were 3-4-inch rains that moved through parts of that west central into southern Minnesota region and really kind of shut them down planting for a week or so. And they got back at it, had really good soil moisture. Some areas even had snow, but thankfully they didn't have any corn or soybeans in at that point. And now, again, they're kind of begging for a rain. Not that they're necessarily short of moisture. They're still, I think, abnormally dry in that area. But, with their early planted corn and soybeans, that crop is going to need something to get out of the ground a little bit more. And, we were talking about it at our team meeting this morning. Everybody has such a different definition of dry this year, and we're seeing that in emergence. You can have a field, maybe even in a different township that looks great, the wheat emergence. You go to your different township, a different field, and that emergence is just very, very spotty.
I talked with JJ Johnson from Helena yesterday, and he talked really hasn't seen a lot of weed pressure in the wheat crop, but boy, they're coming up in soybeans. So guys are going to be busy spraying here in the next few days as well, depending on what happens with rain or wind or what have you. Randy, another volatile week in the marketplace. The rumor mill seems like it's been working overtime. China has been a big part of that story.
Yeah, that's for sure. The funds money has been moving around based on those rumors. And typically, like yesterday and Tuesday, we saw a massive sell-off in the grains, pretty much all of the commodities on Tuesday, really for no reason other than just money movement, funds deciding to liquidate their long positions. But the rumor started that China was canceling some of their corn. And that got the rumor started. No substantiation, nothing to confirm that. And then we saw that pick up again yesterday morning. And then by yesterday afternoon, there were rumors that China was buying. Confirmation this morning, we had 152,000 tons of corn sold to unknown this morning, which everybody's thinking is new crop corn to China again this morning. So rumors just probably wrong, or just rumors to move things around. But at any rate, it's basically all just money movement. It's funds moving the money around. I visited with Bob Utterback yesterday from Utterback Marketing, and he said right now the market psychology is probably more important than anything else we've got going on here in this market, heading into a 3-day holiday weekend. We're closed Monday for the Memorial Day holiday, don't open until Sunday evening. That gets us each day, every 6 hours, there's a new weather forecast that comes out. And so we could see, at least 6 different weather forecasts before we get back to trading again on Monday evening. So that's kind of where the trade is at. They're just taking money off the table, I think, heading to the sidelines here. We're stronger this morning. We're seeing double-digit gains here across the board in the grains again this morning. So it's just a matter of market psychology, market mentality right now.
Yeah, markets, of course, a normal trading day tomorrow, but closed on Monday. And as you mentioned, they'll kick back into gear Monday evening. We had a report from the Office of Inspector General this week regarding EPA and its handling of the Dicamba registration, some political influence, part of that 2018 decision, it sounds like, Kara. Kind of a damning report that came out of the government here.
Well, I think it took some by surprise this week, and I'll get to that in a minute, but kind of expanding a little bit more on that. The OIG did determine that senior agency officials knowingly mishandled the 2018 approval of Fexapan, Extendamax, and Ingenia herbicides, otherwise known as Dicamba. And that report said internal scientific reviews of the Dicamba formulations were blocked. That also claimed that scientific documents were manipulated. And when we visit with folks here in the region, what kind of an impact does that have on spray season? We got a press release from the Department of Agriculture here in North Dakota this morning outlining the changes that had been made for the 2020 label, I believe. And it'll be interesting to see how this moves forward. NDSU Extension Pesticide Program Specialist Andrew Thorstensen was telling me he had never seen a report like this on pesticide registration. He said now he knew that there was a probe going on, but he wasn't sure when the report essentially would be released. He did not think that the report would have implications on the current spray season, but as you all know, things can happen. I felt a sense of deja vu when this came out this week. If you all followed the Dicamba discussion, it was close to this time last year, we saw some legal pushback come right in the midst of spray season. So we really don't know with this report out what speed the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals could act on this, or if they even act on it at all. But Thorstensen says he had two questions. How will environmental advocates use this to advance their arguments in front of that Ninth Circuit Court? And then how will the EPA respond? And then also, he thinks this is a lot bigger than Dicamba. This calls into question a lot of the decisions that EPA makes on a lot of other products. Looking at the responses from others in this conversation, you've got the Center for Food Safety, one of those environmental groups that challenged the EPA's decision to re-register Dicamba for 2020, issuing a statement saying that EPA should cancel Dicamba's recent approval and not try to defend it in court. And then the EPA told us at the Red River Farm Network that scientific integrity was a priority. They've responded to that OIG report, and they're going to be implementing several actions to ensure that pesticide registration decisions are free from political interference. EPA is standing by its 2020 decision on Dicamba. But, you know, you go back to what Andrew Thorstensen said about this calling into question a lot of decisions EPA makes. You know, and a lot of people can probably attest to this. When you lose someone's trust, it's really hard to build it back. So what happens now moving forward will be really key in this ongoing Dicamba saga.
Yeah, saga is the right word. On Capitol Hill this week, we've all seen a little more activity as it relates to that Packer concentration issue. I had a chance to visit with Minnesota Senator Tina Smith this morning. She's working with South Dakota Senator Mike Rounds on a bipartisan letter to the Attorney General's office relating the issue of why the Packers are seeing some the profits that they are, and really what's happening to the pocketbook for ranchers. We know it's been a pretty tough go for our ranchers, and different story what's going on. And if you just look at the beef cutout, what's going on in the packing sector. That follows John Thune, South Dakota Senator John Thune. He was on the floor yesterday. He was asking for a Senate hearing, a Judiciary Committee hearing on this whole issue as well, and wanting to see where the government is on the investigation that started way back a year plus ago when we had that fire at Holcomb, Kansas, and then of course the COVID implications as well. So plenty of stories to work on. We'll keep you up to date here on the Red River Farm Network. It is the Memorial Day weekend ahead of us. I hope we all take note of what this is all about and the sacrifice brave men and women our country did for our country. So thanks to them, a tip of the hat during this upcoming holiday weekend. So on behalf of the Red River Farm Network, Don Wick, Kara Hart, Randy Coonan, and Megan Overby, have yourself a great day, and thanks for joining us on the Reporter Roundtable.